Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest aliens and UFOs video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here. This one yet again based on one of your newer suggestions. This one having to do with more of a phenomenon that has occurred at least since the early 1950s, maybe even a couple of years earlier, pretty much up until today's standpoint, even up to the 2000s and so on. This has been something that has been occurring throughout multiple parts of the world, but interestingly enough, a lot of it occurred there in New Mexico, and it's pretty much tied to what could be a UFO, except for the fact that there's such stark differences associated with it. Not only that too, but there's a potential origin that may or may not make it extraterrestrial, and instead more on the lines of a natural occurrence, and you'll hear about that more here in a minute. But the phenomenon is known as this: the green fireballs. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating information associated with these things and try to explain essentially what they are, what the witnesses have seen, and then again possible origins associated with them. So what are these green fireballs? Well, for lack of a better term, they're just another variation of a UFO. And what I mean is this: like, instead of your average UFO, which is saucer shaped and it has in some cases a cone, and then in other cases it's more of an orb, and in other cases it's like a triangle. No, in this situation it's more of a meteorite. That's how people have described it. Imagine like what you would think as far as a caricature of a meteorite, and that's essentially what this fireball is. The problem is that it goes by so fast and it seems so far away. It's seen just for a few seconds. People can't really discern a very clear look at it. In fact, even the size associated with it has been hard to do so, not only because of the speed, but also because of the illumination. It has a very, very powerful light that it emanates, which again kind of creates a distortion. But otherwise, it's been basically described as a green ball of fire, and then also like a huge green meteor. And this is because it definitely emanates this almost greenish radiation look. That's at least how others described it, like it was almost coated in some type of radioactive green substance. And then there it is, going at a very high speed, a trajectory throughout the skies. And then that's basically what's been reported since, again, the early 1950s. And so there have been thousands of these cases, in fact, since that time period. And in every single one of them, these green fireballs have been seen, and there's very little explanation as to what they could be because there's no evidence of them afterwards. So in other words, people have tried to map where the trajectory would have taken, let's say, an average meteorite, and upon impact, trying to find remnants of it. The problem is there's none. There's none left afterward. And that again creates a baffling effect, because unless it just completely disintegrated within the sky, there would be hopeful that the chance that there would be some kind of evidence for it in the ground to be collected afterward. But no, nothing could be seen on that. But yes, as far as also these circumstances and where people see them, I was mentioning earlier that it's there somewhere in New Mexico. What creates a baffling set of mysterious things is the fact that it was all happening towards Los Alamos, and then that's where a large amount of military personnel, also air crews, and then also airmen, and then others were doing these like sightings associated with these green fireballs, and then seeing them up in the sky. And then once they did so, they saw that there was just very unnatural circumstances surrounding them. The fact that some of them would come in at a 45-degree angle and then stop and then move on a horizontal angle, either east to west or west to east, again denotes that this is not something that's normal associated with a meteor. Nothing would stop it. It would just continue on its original trajectory, as opposed to going in an unnatural curve, if you will, and all of a sudden going on a straight line in a horizontal manner definitely makes you think that this is something else outside of the ordinary, as opposed to something being like, let's say, a natural artifact. But yes, other circumstances surrounding these green fireballs. There's the fact that even in the early 2000s, there was that famous one that happened there in Russia that a lot of people thought could have been something associated with a green fireball. The problem is, though, a lot of these to be truthful, can truly be associated with meteors. They're the ones that always hit the earth on an almost daily basis. You just never hear about it too much because they all just crack up in the sky, disintegrate. There are those truly fanciful ones, the ones that light up the sky with such a bright look to them, even during the daylight. Those are the ones that absolutely make the news. But for the most part, there are many others that just don't. And those truly be absolutely just natural circumstances, just your average meteor coming into the earth and then being able to essentially just disintegrate as is, and maybe sometimes create a spectacle. But it's these other ones, the ones again that turn in different angles. And then also I was reading about one case where a pilot had, in his case, and this was his description, he stated that it was almost coming straight towards his plane, and he had to turn almost at the last second. The way he described it was this. He said, imagine taking something along the lines like a large baseball, coating it with a greenish hue to it. In other words, making it look like it was, again, super radioactive in a green cycle, and then also having it thrown at him at a very top speed and a little bit higher than to him. And that's essentially how this thing was coming straight towards his plane. That again makes it note that this is something almost more intelligent, something else that could be extraterrestrial, but again, very hard to discern when it comes to that because there's just so little evidence associated with it. But the fact that so many of these were occurring in New Mexico, in fact, I was reading about one circumstance where sightings continued throughout late, I think it was 1948, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, late 1948. And they continued throughout several days in December of 1948. So December 6th, 7th, 8th, 11th, 13th, 14th, 20th, and 28th, all of them happening nearby a specific area there in Los Alamos, except for the very last one, which again turned at that 45-degree angle into a horizontal flight path. That's the kind of stuff that actually started to alert the Air Force around that area, because to them, this seemed far more suspect. This was too planned, too coordinated, not something that could be just 100% natural by coincidence. There would be a very good chance that something like this could be from something else. Now, the idea also that this could be more along the lines of warfare experiments was brought up as well. The idea that somehow some other superpower was able to obtain something that they could descend onto the United States in the form of aircraft, but make it look more in the lines of a meteor and something like that would descend to a specific area based on a trajectory. That was looked at as well. But again, how far that investigation got and the evidence that was associated with it, no one knows. If it is, it's super secret and hasn't been discerned just yet. Otherwise, it's left in the air for ufologists and others to state themselves that it's more in the lines of an extraterrestrial thing, and then others that are skeptics, including I was reading one a gentleman who observed an actual green fireball near his location back in 1949. He considered it, though, an ordinary meteor. And then that's where, again, there's those other angles associated with those skeptics, too. But again, a lot of this stuff is pretty much in the air. In fact, there's a term associated with this phenomenon on the natural side. It's called a bolide. It's the idea that it could either be a meteor or it could be something else, a satellite, or even moon dust, if you could believe it. Like meteors hit the moon and emit so much dust, like in a ball, that it can go into the earth itself if it has the right trajectory. All this stuff can create such a bright light when it hits the earth's atmosphere that in turn makes that phenomenon stand out. And then I guess depending on whatever the content was of whatever is impacting the earth, that's where that causes the greenish hue. That's where, again, the bolide comes, but it's more along the lines of ambiguous definition is what it was called. So that's at least one other angle too to discern when it comes to this. But the fact that, again, so many of these were happening in a very strategic location over a specific number of days, and again with so many unusual flight patterns, if you call it that, associated with them, that's the kind of stuff that, again, had people questioning. In fact, I was reading at one point there was even a Time magazine article that in 1951, it was called Great Balls of Fire. They in turn took so many multiple sightings and put them all into this article because they were all just happening in such a short time period. They asked people, was there any white witnesses to this stuff? Were there? And then sure enough, there were. And so they decided to publish all this stuff. Fascinating stuff. But yes, if anyone has any more info, anything else I might have missed, then please post those comments below. Green fireballs, what do you think? Are those essentially aliens riding on meteorites? Doesn't that sound familiar? Wasn't there that movie, Quiet Place, I think it's called, that they were riding those meteorites onto the earth? Or is this something else completely different? Is it truly something ordinary when it comes to average meteors, or maybe some other type of artificial satellite, stuff like that? Or could it be something else altogether? Please post those comments below. All right, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.